Today we are talking about the gap between meaning and work. So you know it's somewhat of a it's a broad topic to discuss, and today we're going to do our best to kind of identify this problem and also think of the strategies that can help us to deal with it. So let's begin by looking at this reading. This reading is called The Mental Health Impact of Meaningless Work by Sam Wolf from QM Careers. So in an article for the Huffington Post about his new book, Johann Hari writes, "If you find your work meaningless and you feel you have no control over it, you are far more likely to become depressed." Research carried out by the Australian scientist Michael Mermath in the 1970s found that the lower an employee ranks in the hierarchy of the workplace, the higher stress levels they have. You would expect that the boss to experience the most stress, but this isn't the case. In writing for The Guardian, Hari spells out the conclusion of Mermath's research into the employees at the British Civil Service. It turns out if you have no control over your work, you are far more likely to become stressed and, crucially, depressed. Humans have an innate need to feel that what we are doing day to day is meaningful. When you're controlled, you can't create meaning out of your work. Hari also tells a story that exemplifies how gaining some control over your work can do wonders for your mental health. "I found the beginnings of an answer to the epidemic of meaningless work in Baltimore. Meredith Mitchell used to wake up every morning with her heart racing with anxiety. She dreaded her office job. So she took a bold step, one that lots of people thought was crazy. Her husband, Josh, and their friends had worked for years in a bike store where they were ordered around and constantly felt insecure. Most of them were depressed. One day they decided to set up their own bike store, but they wanted to run it differently. Instead of having one guy at the top giving orders, they would run it as a democratic cooperative. This meant they would make decisions collectively. They would share out the best and worst jobs, and they would all together be the boss. It would be like a busy democratic tribe. When I went to their store, Baltimore Bicycle Works, the staff explained how in this different environment, their persistent depression and anxiety had largely lifted. It's not that their individual tasks had changed much. They fixed bikes before, they fixed bikes now. But they had dealt with the unmet psychological needs that were making them feel so bad by giving themselves autonomy and control over their work." It should be stressed that having autonomy in your work is not the only way that your job becomes meaningful. We also find meaning in work when we are passionate about it, which includes the alignment between values, goals, and vision of the company and our own. Work that involves a high degree of personal creativity and innovation can also be extremely rewarding, as can work that we are truly appreciated for doing. Interestingly, and this runs counter to Hari's argument, in several jobs that involve a high degree of autonomy, 90% of people who do them fail to find them meaningful. How could that be? Well, it looks like a key factor that determines the meaningfulness of a job is whether it makes a difference to the lives of others. Jobs that are highly meaningful are those that make a significant lasting impact on others. When your well-being is on the line, it becomes palpably unwise to choose work that is highly controlled and meaningless for the sake of higher pay. That is, unless undertaking this kind of role is part of your goal of establishing and maintaining a career that is meaningful. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl said that humans are defined by the will to meaning. We find fulfillment in life by searching for and finding meaning. When we lead a life starved of meaning, we suffer. Our lives become stifled. But we all have windows of opportunity to correct for this. We often underestimate our ability to carve out the kind of career path that we deeply yearn for. So this article is a nice kind of summary of beginning with stating this problem that perhaps you are familiar with. And if you are, go ahead and feel free to share in the comments anything you'd like to say about an experience you might have had at a place of work or anything at all that you'd like to share with us. But you know, I found another study actually in the same book, which is I highly recommend, the book by Johann Hari, Lost Connections, that in a Gallup poll that was done not maybe 7-8 years ago, they found that out of surveying people all over the world in over 142 countries, only 13% of human beings in this survey are actively engaged in their work. And 63% are not engaged. That means they don't care, they don't find it meaningful, they're not happy with the work they're doing. And 24% are actively disengaged. Means they are actually plotting to take revenge on the job. They are purposefully doing the job wrong and trying to sabotage the work. So imagine to the extent to which this crisis can get in one's life, where we don't find any meaning in what we're doing the most. Because our career, a lot of times, consumes our life the most. We are at work 40 hours out of the week. And these days, that is a lie, that is a myth. Because these days, you might physically be at work 40 hours a week, but you have to consider the time that it takes to commute to work. You have to consider the fact that people have to get up very early in order to prepare for work, not just take care of themselves, but maybe take care of their family, and then they can finally make the commute that then takes time, that leads them to work. And the same thing again afterward, getting back home, not to mention all of the emails that you might get from an employer at odd hours over the weekend or phone calls. And so it's not really 40 hours a week. It's a lot more than that that goes into your job. And all of that can really, really starve the life out of somebody to lead them to anxiety and depression. And one of the purposes of having this talk is that this is something that we need to evaluate in ourselves. Are we satisfied with the work that we're doing? Is it meaningful for us? If it is, great. If not, it's important to consider that we'll have many friends out there that will be driven to anxiety and depression because of this problem. And this is one way to help them. So one of the things that we really want to identify, and that these studies have shown, is that people don't just feel like they have no... One of the biggest problems is that if in your work you feel like you have no control, okay? People tell you what to do, people tell you how to do it, people tell you when to do it. And that's one problem. Then the other problem is when somebody is at the lower end of the hierarchy of the place of employment. That also creates anxiety and depression. especially when not only you're at the lower end of the hierarchy, but you're not given any control. You're not allowed to take control at your job. And these things define what it feels to me to be disempowered. And it's this feeling of being disempowered that slowly begins to lead a human being to very deep states of depression. And a lot of times, we wonder, why is it that a person stays in a situation like this? It's not really fair sometimes to just kind of tell people that, hey, just create the meaning, or hey, just look on the bright side. That doesn't really solve the problem, because a lot of times there's no energy to create that. And over time, people find ways to numb themselves so that they can continue doing this job. People can even go to the extreme that on the job they drink, on the job they smoke more, on the job they take drugs in order to numb themselves and get through the routine. And it's a mystery why, when somebody seemingly has something better that they could be doing, or maybe has some other options, or is trying to look for other options but is not quite getting to that point where they are making the change, we wonder why people stay. And that, in many ways, is mysterious. And maybe you can offer an answer to that. Why would somebody stay at a place where they're not happy? So today, we're gonna, I'll offer some helpful suggestions that have to do with our individual self, what we can do to cope, what we can do to change, and then also what can society do. So I really love that article because this is not just a few people who have this problem. If you look at that Gallup poll, this is a worldwide problem where basically 80-something% of people are unhappy at work. They are not engaged in what they're doing. And life is short. Life is very, very short. And valuable time, vast amounts of time, the majority of people's times are being wasted. People are not living to their full potential. We are not utilizing the resources of people's physical, intellectual potentials properly as a society if we allow something like this to continue. So I love this article that gave this solution, that these workers at the bike shop, when they were feeling dissatisfied, they decided to, actually there's a backstory to that. They decided first to start a union. And the boss didn't like that. And the boss was an okay person, not a horrible person. And maybe was entertaining the idea a little bit, but actually also began to do research to see how he can counter this, because he didn't want the workers to have a union. The union is the voice for the workers. The union does collective bargaining, talks to the workers and say, what would you like? How would your life be improved based on, your conditions at this job? What can we do? They come up with a list of demands, they negotiate with the employers, and you come up with win-win situations. The bike shop did not want to do that. So, the employer. So rather than this, when those folks took the initiative, start their own bike shop where they could be the boss, which a lot of times people see that as a solution. They say, I had a terrible job until I quit my job and I became my own boss. And that's definitely going to be a big step up, because now you have full autonomy, and human beings do not like to be controlled. I'll quickly interject. if you are a supervisor, if you have some sort of job role where you are somebody's supervisor, one of the best things that you can do to improve the morale and the productivity of the workplace is give the workers as much autonomy as possible. Don't tell them how to do things. Ask them how things should be done. Let them give you the feedback and follow what they say. We have this like so many things in our society, stuff is backwards and upside down. And one of the things that is upside down is a boss should not be telling the workers how to do the work. The workers are doing the work. They should tell the boss how the work needs to be done. That to me is common sense. But we don't live in a common sense society. And therefore, even these businesses that have a lot of workers and employees are not even reaching their full potential because they have this distorted assembly line of production, or distorted routine in how they do their work. So back to the bike shop, they decided to form a cooperative. And a cooperative is a place that all of the employees own the business. They equally distribute the profits and pay each other's and their own salary. And they equally make decisions about the business. Okay? And they, like he said too, they take turns. They take turns on, different jobs to do and things like that. And at the end of the day, I mean, that really has relieved an enormous amount of pressure. And there isn't enough scientific study on cooperatives into the mental well-being of the workers. But we know from these case studies that when a worker feels like they're in control and they don't feel like they're at the bottom of some hierarchy, they automatically feel valued. They feel cared for. They feel like a real human being, because human beings are expansive mental beings who just want to expand their mind. That's part of our dharma. We don't want to be in bondage, not personally and not institutionally. And in this country, in the United States, that's supposed to be the land of the free, that's supposed to be the embodiment of a democracy. We live in a place where things like cooperatives or anything that is somewhat socialized is completely frowned upon. And so and we go every day to work for a dictator, while we think we have this amazing democracy because somehow we voted for a political candidate. But we have no economic democracy. And if one day we have economic democracy, then we're going to see a large improvement in people's mental well-being. So I think that right now we'll go into some comments, and then as we read the comments, I will offer a few more suggestions for some personal things that we can do to find more meaning at work. So let's start with that. So we'll start here on Facebook. And Brother Hitendra says, "Thank you, Creator, for such a wonderful world wide web of your love." Absolutely. Thank you, Creator. Thank you, everybody. And Stephen says, "What types of jobs should we avoid?" There is no, that's another kind of failed conception, that some jobs are like untouchable jobs or should be avoided because of what they do. I mean, a stigma on doing cleaning work, a stigma on doing field work. The truth is that we need all of those jobs. If we don't have somebody at a company that cleans, or if the workers don't take turn cleaning, then place will be dirty. If we don't have somebody doing the difficult jobs of working in the fields and picking our foods and shipping them to the markets, then we will starve, because not everybody can grow their own food. So, and I know maybe this wasn't your intention, October, in this question, but I'm just throwing that in there, that all jobs have dignity. All jobs actually serve a purpose that contributes to the larger well-being, whether it is at a company, and then by extension, that company is a part of society, so contributes to the larger society. But the problems are when you feel disempowered at your job, And if we could just empower those people that do whatever type of job, and care for those that are in the lowest hierarchy and try to bring some equity, ideally forming more cooperatives than corporations, then we avoid people going into anxiety and depression by giving them more control over what they do. So thank you, brother. Let's see here. Hitendra says, meaning in my work is to give away as many smiles as I can every day. I smile so hard. They feel it past my mask. Another thing is that I imagine the tasks are done for Creator and therefore are worth more than my paycheck. I also begin and end my workday by thanking Creator for my work and job. I remember the maxim, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Thus, I do the job because it is there to do. That's really nice. How you do one thing is how you do everything. I really love that. It reminds me of what Socrates told Dan in The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. The difference between me and you, Dan, is that you practice gymnastics and I practice everything. It means I don't just try to do one thing well, I try to do everything well. So Hitendra, it's so wonderful to see that you have this deep spiritual life that permeates every aspect of your life. And that is our secret as yogis. We approach our life ideally from a deeper place of peace and happiness and bliss. And you said you do things for the Creator. I would say that that's definitely a strategy to bring meaning into something that you're doing, is that you see that thing as the Creator. And so then whatever it is that you're doing, you're not just interacting with that physical object, you're seeing it as, another expression of the divine. So that is a wonderful strategy that we can apply to that area of our lives and to all other areas of our lives. And, one thing that I'm also hearing and that I'd like to add as a strategy is the act of service. The article also, pointed to that. We human beings will find more meaning in life through service, more happiness actually through service. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that our work is the service, because our work we're being paid for, and sometimes we're working for a rich company that doesn't give a crap about us or others. So it's not the service to the company when I say do service at work, but you could find other opportunities for service at your job. There's always a chance to, for example, I'm a teacher, and at the college, I'm a professor at the college where I teach. One of the people that I knew well, some of the people that I knew well, were the cleaning staff. And it's not because I took made an effort to talk to them. Of course I did, but even without that, actually there was a gentleman by the name of Shem. And Shem, when I first started, he talked to me. And he asked me, "How are you doing, Professor?" And I was like, "Oh, hi, Shem. Hi, I'm doing well, thank you." He found conversations with me. And, you know, so he did a service to me. And it was, what I'm saying is we can do services like that. And he did a service to the students, talking to them, putting a smile on their faces. And so, like that, we can find opportunities to do service wherever we are, whenever we are. And that makes the job a little more meaningful. Even in the job that we do, we can give service to people who deserve it. We don't want to sacrifice for people who don't deserve it. I wouldn't suggest to put anything extra into a job that you don't like, that is going to make you sacrifice yourself and further your unhappiness. It has to be a service that is within your capacity, that also helps people that need help. So maybe I needed help. And that's why Shem was so gracious enough to engage with me like that. So, okay, so service is a nice way to find meaning at work. The more service-like our jobs are too, I believe that they can bring more fulfillment. Okay, now, and then crescendo, having the news feature the country's national happiness metric should focus attention more on health than the GDP does. This discussion reminds me of the phrase servant leadership, though I don't know if the intent matches the phrase. Servant leadership. I like that. Meaning that the boss is there to serve the workers. That's really how it should be, right? That's really how it should be. The boss should be there to help the workers do their work, not to pile on work for them and create problems for them. So yes, I like that servant leadership term that you have there, brother. And then when I left my corporate professional job, Crescendo says, for a year at an ashram as a resident volunteer, the upper level management made clear that I would never be able to return to the company. Some employers allow sabbaticals. Many folks are likely deterred from doing something more meaningful because they don't feel their career could be continued later. So, okay, so then the job wasn't very flexible, didn't allow you to come and go. And that feeling of lack of control really weighs you down. Some of my worst experiences when I've worked, at my places of work, have been when a boss is trying to micromanage me. Or a boss doesn't recognize something that is important to me and encourages it, Then we have here October. Perfectly answered. Thank you, Krsnatma. Thank you, brother. So let's look over here on YouTube. Now I see Water Sees Water says, I've watched many of your past videos, but as for live, this is my first time. Great to know. Thank you, brother. It's an honor to have you here all the way from Japan. I'm glad you're enjoying our program. Everything is resonating with you. Thanks for being here, and we hope to see you more. He also says, I have a question. Kevalam should be pronounced Kewalam, shouldn't it? V equals W in Sanskrit transcription. Actually, no. No, in the Sanskrit language, there is va, the sound va. So that's where the consonant there is for v. Okay, so it's kevalam. Thanks for the question. Izaka says, my third time joining. I always look forward to starting my weekend with your program. Thank you for all you do. It wouldn't be the same without you, Izaka. Trust me. Thank you for what you're doing, being here with us. And Chiquita says, overeating also. So did you say something before, Chiquita? Oh, yes, you did. Good morning. It's my first time. Thanks for having me. I'm grateful. And then, let's see. It says overeating also. Maybe you are saying how that also leads to depression. Yes, I agree. Izaka says job security possible. Fear of the unknown keeps people stagnant. There you go. Why do people not leave when they're unhappy at their jobs? Could it be a fear of the unknown? Could it be fear itself? Well, fear is something we're wired with. Fear can have a good utility for us and a negative utility. In this case, it would be negative. Now, I'm going to jump to another strategy I've been saying I want to offer. So, an important strategy that you should keep in mind if you don't like where you work, or if you want to change, especially if you don't like where you work and it's leading you to anxiety and depression, is plan your escape. Plan your exit. Okay? Be thinking little by little what you will do to leave the job, to find something better. That's just what we do in relationships where we feel trapped. That's what we do in all situations where we feel trapped. Children who maybe don't want to live with their parents. I mean, when they're grown, they want more autonomy. They want more control, more self-determination. I always tell those young people, maybe you could go off to school and find a place to stay there. If you can, live on campus. And so in other words, plan your exit. And as you plan your exit, you will start to feel the relief, and then do it. Make the change. And give yourself as much time as is needed to make that change. Like I said earlier, it's not always easy to just think that is easy. I mean, it's not good to think that is easy, because what energy do we have left at the end of the day when we've spent 10 hours working? And I'm not saying because of the 8-hour workday, but the commute, the emails, the preparation, 10, 12 hours working. How much energy are you going to have to look for something else? Not much. Because willpower scientists have identified has a battery level. And so every day you're at your job, you are using willpower. It takes willpower to be here. And so that is going to get used up until a point in the day where it is gone. And you're going to need a nap, or you're going to need a nice meal, or something to recharge you. And then sometimes it's just totally gone at the end of the day. And that's why people, in a way, numb themselves with alcohol at night, or numb themselves with entertainment. Distract themselves. And then the next morning, wake up again, miserable because they're going to a job that they don't like. And that is concerning. Life is not meant to be like that. We live in a society that has made that normal. And one day, I know it will change, but we have to start to become aware and propose things like economic democracy, and also encourage our friends to feel better, and to find a career that is meaningful for them. Because my guru also said everybody should find a career that they enjoy, that fulfills their maximum potential. I don't have the exact quote, unfortunately, but it's a quote by him that I love, and it's important. So let's see here. And then, Thank you, Izaka, for that comment. Chiquita said survival mentality versus thriving. Fear of the unknown makes it more difficult than staying in an unhappy state. And many people feel they have no other choice because the alternative is assumed to be self-sabotage. That's right. Hey, if you quit your job, you won't have health benefits anymore. If you quit your job, it's a gamble, right? And the society has found ways to keep us trapped in our job. Many times people stay because of some kind of benefits that they're getting, and that's not right. And then she says, more often those environments provide autonomy. Or she says, I think, before that, Izaka said, I agree, Chiquita, people are too stuck in survival mentality. Chiquita says, I think communal living and tribal living are akin to a democratic cooperatives. More often, those environments provide autonomy and purpose, but also fulfill the human need for belonging. Very good. Thank you so much, sister. I agree that ideally, our jobs can feel communal, can feel like everybody has a voice, everybody is heard. And ideally, we live in a place like that too, where everybody has a voice and everybody's heard, and we have a community where we feel a sense of belonging. These things are integral to our well-being, to our personal development. That's why we're talking about them today. She says, Chiquita also says, that was a reference to coping mechanisms. And Izaka says, haha, that's a good one. Planning is great. I believe this message is a sign from the Supreme. I need to plan my exit and do it fast. Okay, great. I'm glad that this has echoed something in you that you know is important. Okay? And then Peggy says, future topic, educational system of karma. Okay, that's interesting. Let me know what more ideas you have around that, Peggy. So we'll start to close, and I'll close with just a couple more points that we mentioned trying to do some service while at work, which is like what Hitendra was describing when he gives a smile to people. And we talked about having your exit plan in place. And then also another important thing is to identify two more strategies. One is to identify every day that you go to work, though you may not like it, you don't like the conditions, to just realize and realize that actually you made a choice that day. You made a choice to be there. And every step of the way, when you're aware that you are making a choice and you are aware that you do have some choices, that is going to give you a sense of autonomy. So always remember that you have a choice, and always do your best to make more choices. Okay? To feel like you're making choices. Likewise, do your best to provide choices for other people. Now, the last thing is that sometimes we are doing a difficult job and we're sacrificing ourselves for a reason. It could be you're saving up for something. You're doing it to feed your family. You're doing it to take care of others. So one good thing that helps when we're going through an enormous task where we've lost motivation, an uncomfortable task where we've lost motivation, is to ask yourself this question: why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And then you'll remember why you're doing it, and that will keep you going. It could be, I'm doing this to put my daughter through college. I'm doing this to send money to my family abroad because of these specific needs, because they're sick, for example, or something like that. So asking yourself, why am I doing this, can also be very helpful. Okay, thank you so much. We will go ahead and close for today. I want to wish you all the best and encourage you to create choices for yourself, to um, um, avoid any possible anxiety or depression because of something like the work that you're doing, and to also think about, you know, this aspect on a societal level, that we should be doing more to create economic democracy to prevent this kind of problem for people. Okay? All right. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for joining today.